I didn't walk into Crescent Bank expecting dignity, but I brought my scarf. It was a Tuesday morning, colder than most Novembers in Charlotte. The wind tore through the buildings along South Tryon Street, sweeping up brittle leaves and the scent of someone's cinnamon latte. I kept my hands tucked into the sleeves of my old coat, the kind of coat that made you look twice to check if someone needed help. Inside the bank, it smelled like printer paper and polished marble. Everything gleamed, except me. I stood quietly in line, $100 withdrawal slip folded neatly in my palm, edges soft from being held too long. It wasn't for me. It was for Mrs. Lorna, the elderly woman down the hall who'd spent her heating bill on canned soup. People glanced at me the way you glance at something out of place in a museum. One man adjusted his tie. A woman in stiletto boots stepped ahead as if my proximity might rub off on her. I pulled my scarf closer. It was a faded cranberry red, frayed at one end. I bought it the day I didn't get the marketing job I'd prepared 3 weeks for. It cost me $20 at a second-hand store, and the last of my pride. Still, it was mine, and it stayed with me when others didn't. Next, the teller called. But before I could step forward, I heard the click of heels behind me. That familiar cadence, sharp, confident, intentional. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Sam's voice cut through the space like piano wire. I thought they stopped letting people in with holes in their sleeves. I turned. There she was, in a navy blazer with a nameplate that read branch manager, Samantha Shaw. Her smile didn't touch her eyes, and her makeup was perfect. It always was. Did you come to make a deposit of memories? Or are you just here to cash in on pity again? Some of the customers looked up from their phones. The security guard pretended to adjust his earpiece. Even the marble seemed to hold its breath. I didn't respond. I never did with Sam. Her voice rose, not out of anger but pleasure. We don't really serve walk-ins anymore, especially not beggars. I stepped aside. Quietly. My boots scuffed the polished floor, a sound barely louder than her laughter. I didn't try to explain. I didn't cry. I didn't give her what she wanted. Instead, I looked her straight in the eye and nodded. And then I left. Back outside, the cold didn't feel as cruel. I breathed in the sharp air and kept walking, not fast, not defeated, just steady. Past the boutique windows I couldn't afford to look into, past the lunchtime crowd forming at the taco truck. I waved at the florist who sometimes gave me yesterday's blooms for free. She waved back with a kind of silent respect. At home, the hallway light flickered as I unlocked the door to apartment 204. Mrs. Lorna's door was ajar. I saw her thin legs under a knitted throw and made a mental note to check on her after lunch. I set down my bag, pulled off my boots, and walked to the small desk in the corner. My laptop waited, lid slightly cracked like it had been listening all day. I tapped the key. The screen blinked, then lit up in green. Welcome, M. Shaw. Accessing. Shell Code Holdings Executive Console. Beneath the plain text interface, a dashboard unfolded. Subsidiaries, silent partners, offshore accounts, back-end systems humming in invisible code. My fingers moved with ease, familiar, confident. Not the movements of someone who begged, but someone who built things no one could see. That bank account Sam mocked? It wasn't even my smallest. The scarf I still wore? That was real. Just like the woman who wore it. But the rest? Let's just say, she had no idea who she'd just laughed at. And I wasn't ready to tell her yet. It started with a vibration, soft, persistent, unwelcome. The phone buzzed against the counter while I stirred peppermint tea, steam curling upward like memory. I didn't look right away. No one called me anymore unless they were lost or trying to sell me something. But there it was. Tessa shock line. Missed call, too. Then a voicemail icon. I sipped my tea. Let it burn a little. She used to laugh when I told her I had plans, real ones. Maybe aim lower, she once smirked, flipping through a resort brochure while I held up my college application. That brochure got more eye contact than I ever did. I turned the phone face down and opened the window. The sound of light rain pattered on the fire escape, softening the corners of the city. November had finally remembered to be gray. By the third call, I answered. Madeline. Oh my gosh, it's been forever, Tessa chirped, her voice thick with syrup and something metallic underneath. I was just thinking, it's been way too long since we had a girls' brunch. You remember Le Jardin? They do this incredible saffron omelet now. I waited. And, well, she continued, I heard a little something through the grapevine. I mean, who knew you'd be in Charlotte? So grown up. So, under the radar. I imagined her pacing in her kitchen, trying to decide if she sounded breezy enough. Maybe Sunday, she offered. Just us sisters. Like old times. Like old times. I repeated. My voice came out low even. There was a pause. Then a fake laugh. You know, but better. We've all grown. I'll check, I said, and hung up. 10 minutes later, Greg Klein called. His name lit up with a stock photo of a boat. Hey, Maddie, he beamed into the receiver, every syllable soaked in bonhomie. Quick one. I've been working on this boutique property thing in Asheville. Real quiet, real exclusive. We're pulling in some seed funds, and you were the first person I thought of. I didn't say a word. He filled the silence with optimism. Nothing formal yet, just, friends and family getting in early. Great for legacy wealth. Not a big ask, $50K tops. I can shoot over the pitch deck. Click. I turned my phone off and dropped it into the drawer next to a packet of ramen and 3 unmatched gloves. A soft chime sounded from the hallway. I thought it was the wind, but it was my mother's voice, trapped in voicemail. Joan Shaw, Maddie, darling. I hope you're well. I had this feeling. Maybe it's just a mother's instinct, but something tells me you've been busy. Anyway, I saw a news piece about women in finance, and it reminded me of you. We should chat. Let's not let time steal us away. No mention of Thanksgiving. No address. Just a voice that missed me when it smelled money. I reached for the old storage box under my bed. It was heavier than I remembered. Inside, tax folders, estate letters, my grandfather's obituary, and a slim blue notebook labeled Maddie's Saving Goals, age 9. I flipped through the pages. Page 3, buy my own house. Page 5, send grandma to California. Page 12, never owe anyone anything. My eyes stopped on the will registry. Arthur Leviticus. My mother's father. The one who taught me chess and spreadsheets. There was a trust filed in Pennsylvania under his name. I'd seen it when I was 18. A provision for M. Shaw with co-signatory rights on maturity. But now my name wasn't on the digital copy Carmen had sent last spring. My phone blinked again. Carmen Liu. Tessa tried accessing the trust portal. From a flagged IP. Want me to block her? I replied, not yet. I pulled out the ledger from the estate packet. Arthur's handwriting was clean and deliberate. Assets must outlive the noise. Structure is the quietest revenge. His notes showed the trust migrated through 3 shells. The last audit was in 2021, 2 weeks after Joan visited Tessa in D.C. That same month, my name was delisted from 2 instruments. It hadn't been an accident. They'd slowly written me out of the future without saying a word. I closed the folder. Outside, the rain thickened. My tea was cold. I stared out at the lights blinking across the city skyline. Then I opened my phone again. To Carmen. Book dinner. New message. No email confirmation. Let's see who shows up. And I tied my scarf. I didn't wear anything new. Just the same black turtleneck I'd worn to last year's job fair, and the scarf. Always the scarf. The fig tree stood like a quiet cathedral near the edge of East Boulevard, decked out in holiday pine and twinkling lights. Inside, candles flickered atop linen-draped tables, and a jazz trio played soft renditions of winter classics. Laughter rose and fell in tasteful bursts. No one looked angry here. That was the trick. I arrived early and was guided to a round table near the fireplace. The hostess placed me at the head without question. The seat used to belong to my father, once upon a time when dinners ended with toasts, not tally sheets. I placed a slim leather folder on the charger in front of me and ordered still water with lime. Tessa arrived first. Not a minute late, not a strand of hair out of place. She hugged me like someone greeting a polite stranger. "Maddie," she said brightly, "I love that you chose this place. Greg and I had our second anniversary dinner here, remember?" I smiled, just barely. "I do." She sat to my right, chatting about Brussels sprouts and balance sheets like we hadn't spoken in years. Greg followed shortly, smelling of cologne and confidence. "Mads," he grinned. "Wow, look at you. You're glowing. What's your secret, a retinol or revenge?" I gave him nothing. Sam was next. She entered with a stiffness in her jaw that years in management training hadn't softened. She nodded toward me, then to Tessa, sliding into her seat as though proximity were punishment. Finally, Joan arrived, wearing a brooch I hadn't seen in years. I blinked. It was the one I bought for her 60th birthday, the one she left behind in my old apartment when I moved out. No card. No call. "Darling," she said, kissing the air near my cheek, "this place is charming. Just the right amount of nostalgic." We ordered duck breast for Greg, sea bass for Tessa, soup for Sam, a salad for Joan. I asked for the risotto and passed on the wine. Dinner began with chatter. Light, meaningless, precise. "Greg's been exploring angel investing," Tessa mentioned with a rehearsed chuckle. "We're really passionate about empowering small businesses." "Actually," Greg added, "we're vetting a few portfolios. You might find one of them familiar." I let them talk. Let them test the air like predators sniffing at a cave. Sam stayed mostly quiet, but her eyes kept flicking to the folder in front of me. "Maddie," Joan finally said, dabbing her lips, "we're just so proud of you. It's been a long road, hasn't it?" "Longer than you remember," I said quietly. The table paused. I reached for the folder and opened it. No fanfare. No speech. One by one, I placed the contents on the table like slow cards in a poker game. Trust amendments. Forged signatures. IP logins traced to Tessa's condo in D.C. A notarized letter dated 3 weeks after Arthur Lev's funeral, removing M. Shaw from executor status. Greg leaned forward, lips parted in a half-smile. "Wait, is this?" "Yes," I said. "This is everything." Sam let out a breath like she'd been punched. Tessa tilted her head. "Maddie, I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. These things are complicated." "They're not," I replied. "Complicated would have required conversation." Joan stayed silent. Her hands folded into her lap like a woman waiting for a benediction. I stood slowly, pushed my chair in, and looked at each of them not with anger, but with something heavier. "The truth doesn't need a headline," I said, "just quiet confirmation. Then I turned to the waiter, who had been hovering at a respectful distance. "Separate checks," I told him. For once. He blinked, nodded. Tessa opened her mouth, but I was already walking. Past the pine-scented garland, past the jazz trio, past the photo of a holiday gala from 5 years ago that still hung near the coat check. I didn't take the folder. I left it right there. They had erased me on paper. Now they'd read me in silence. Rain slashed sideways across the marble steps of Crescent Bank, coating the sidewalk in a silver sheen. I didn't bring an umbrella. I didn't need one. The glass doors hissed shut behind me like the seal of a courtroom. The air inside was warm but sterile, like a breath held too long. Polished floors, the soft murmur of printers, and a woman at the front desk who looked up with the kind of smile people save for the professionally dressed. I wore gray slacks, a navy coat, and no makeup. I didn't need armor. "Can I help you?" she asked. I slid a sealed envelope across the counter. "I'm here under authority of the Pennsylvania Trust, and I'd like to speak with the branch manager." She blinked. Then, something shifted in her posture. She stood up and motioned me toward the back office. Through the frosted glass, I saw her, Samantha, already at a desk, laptop open, purse unzipped, heels tapping impatiently. The teller beside her wore a headset and confusion. "I'm not sure why it's flagging," he said as I walked in. "It's asking for secondary authorization." Sam turned. Her face, perfectly powdered, tightened when she saw me. "Maddie." "Samantha," I replied, calm. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. I simply opened the folder Carmen had helped prepare. Inside were notarized documents, trust directives, and a court-sealed injunction. My fingers barely brushed the edges. "I'm here as controlling stakeholder of Shell Code Holdings," I said, "and executor of the Lev Discretionary Trust, per reinstated documents dated December 18th, 2023. The teller blinked. "Ma'am, this overrides the pending transaction." Sam's hand flew to the screen. "Wait. No. This is a misunderstanding. I have full authorization." "Not anymore," I said. "That authorization expired the moment the signatures were confirmed forged." She stood. Her chair groaned as it rolled back. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." I gestured to the teller. "Please execute the freeze directive. Effective immediately." He stared at us, 2 women, 2 sisters on opposite sides of the same inheritance, and tapped a few keys. The screen flickered. A soft ping echoed. Frozen. The color drained from Sam's face. She reached for her laptop, her phone, anything, but the system was locked. A red banner scrolled across the monitor. Account activity suspended. Legal action pending. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then she sat. Correction, she collapsed. Not dramatically. Not with a wail or sob. Just quietly. Her knees folded under her as if the floor had turned liquid. She sank to the tile like a marionette snipped at the strings, still clutching a sheaf of unsigned forms. "Maddie," she whispered, not in rage, but disbelief. You're not supposed to." I crouched down beside her, not too close. "You were never small," I said, voice low. "Just empty." I stood and looked at the teller. "Please send an acknowledgement to the Trust's legal counsel. Carmen Liu is CC'd." He nodded. Sam didn't look up. As I walked past the front desk, my phone buzzed. A message from Carmen. "Freeze complete. 3 flagged accounts. You okay?" I typed, "Yeah." She dropped. Hard. Then added, "I didn't say more than I needed to. Outside, The rain had slowed to a whisper. Drops clung to bare branches, catching light like silver pins. I turned my collar up and walked back toward the street where my car was parked. By the time I got home, the sun had vanished. The apartment smelled faintly of tea and electricity. I slipped off my shoes, turned on a lamp, and noticed the envelope right away, cream-colored, resting on the kitchen counter. No postage. Hand-delivered. My name, in looping script I hadn't seen since childhood. Mom's handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside, a single page. Folded twice. And at the bottom, a signature I knew better than my own. The letter arrived without ceremony, no perfume, no seal, no dramatic scrawl. Just my name on the envelope and the faintest scent of old paper, like it had been sitting in a drawer with sweaters and secrets. I sat at the table, rain tracing slow lines down the kitchen window. My tea had gone lukewarm. The letter, opened carefully with the butter knife I hadn't used since Thanksgiving, lay flat beneath my hand. Maddie, I imagine you're surprised to hear from me. It was never done to talk about certain things. I won't pretend I was right. There are pieces missing between us, and I don't know if I'm too late. Your grandfather used to say silence has weight. Maybe now I understand. Joan. No love, Mom. No apology. But in the brittle spacing, the ink that dipped slightly at the edges, I heard something older than regret. Not sorrow, more like the echo of every moment she didn't speak when I needed her to. I reached for the old leather-bound ledger I'd kept since I was a child. The pages were worn soft, corners rounded from years of flipping. Most of the entries were neat, in pencil, dated and labeled. I turned to the one page I never forgot. May 2nd, 2003, $7, Dream Fund. That was the day Grandpa Arthur opened the account for me. He tucked the receipt into a manila envelope and told me, "Don't wait for someone else to tell you it matters. If it matters to you, it matters." I'd drawn a little rocket next to it in crayon. The mark had faded, but I could still see the lines. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. We were in the garage. I must have been 10. Grandpa had been rebuilding a radio, tubes, wires, a smell like ink and solder. I sat next to him with my notebook. He wore a flannel shirt with holes near the cuffs and hummed the same tune over and over. I didn't know the words, but the melody stayed. Some people leave you money, he'd said, adjusting his glasses. Others leave you a compass. Learn the difference. I hadn't understood it then. I did now. The phone rang. Carmen. I traced everything, she said, her voice calm and professional as always. The fraudulent withdrawals, the ghost signatures, all sealed. You're in the clear. Thank you. You okay? I'm clean, I said. Not happy. Not vindicated. Just clean. Like someone who's finally washed off years of old dust. She paused. You ready for the last part? Almost. After we hung up, I turned back to the ledger. I added a new entry. March 8th, 2024, $100,000. Mentorship fund. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about showing them what they missed. It was about building something they couldn't take away. I opened the drawer where I kept the small things, receipts, keys, an old theater stub. At the bottom lay a soft, folded square, my grandfather's handkerchief. Worn cotton, stitched initials. I pressed it between my palms before slipping it into my coat pocket. Then I picked up my phone. I hovered over the last voicemail from Tessa. Her voice, when it played, was still syrupy, still rehearsed. Mads, call me back, okay? Let's just talk. This is family stuff, not legal. Don't make it weird. I didn't listen to the rest. I pressed delete. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. Before bed, I logged into my travel account. The destination auto-filled. Shaw Residence, 1994, Hazelwood Lane. Final visit. I booked the trip without hesitation. One last thing, I whispered to the screen. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes, softer than I remembered. The driveway hadn't changed. Same pale stone, same uneven dip near the mailbox that once swallowed my bike tire. I stood at the front steps of the Shaw house, unsure if I was visiting or saying goodbye. It smelled like lilacs. The bushes by the window were blooming early, just like every spring. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. I turned the brass knob and walked in. The living room held its breath. Frames lined the mantel, weddings, vacations, baby showers. Every face smiling, curated, frozen. But not one photo of me, not even as a child. I walked through the hall slowly, trailing my fingers along the wallpaper. In the kitchen, Joan sat at the old breakfast table, wrapped in a cardigan I vaguely remembered from my high school years. Her hands were folded neatly, as if she'd been waiting all morning. "You came," she said. I nodded. No hug, no fanfare. Just the space between us, more honest than anything we'd shared in years. "I thought you might," she added. Her voice was quiet, less brittle than in the letter, more real. "I'm not here for anything," I said. "Not an apology. Not a conversation." "I know." She looked older now, not just in the gray at her temples or the slope of her shoulders, but in the way her eyes didn't dart around the room anymore. They just stayed on me, like she'd finally stopped searching for someone else to fill the seat across from her. From my coat, I pulled out a small frame. The photo inside was faded, slightly crumpled at the corners. Me at 8, grinning beside Grandpa Arthur in the garage. Grease on my cheek, holding up a wrench like it was a trophy. "I found it in the attic once. Tessa said it didn't match the display," I said, placing it gently on the built-in shelf near the stairs. Joan blinked. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. I didn't need them. The back door opened. Tessa's voice filtered in, light and sharp. "I'm just saying, if she's here to rub something in." Then she saw me. "Oh," she said, faltering. I looked at her. Just looked. No smile. No scowl. Just silence. Sam followed a few seconds later, holding a leather binder, her face unreadable. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. "I'm not staying," I said to all of them. No one protested. As I turned toward the foyer, a young woman stepped out of the side hallway with a laundry basket. She startled. "Oh, sorry. I didn't know anyone." "It's fine," I said, then handed her a small card from my wallet. "If you ever want better, call me. We're hiring." She took it like it was fragile. I smiled, just a little. The front door clicked behind me, soft as a breath. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel hollow. I just felt complete. As if the bridge I'd been trying to cross all my life had never been mine to walk. So I stopped and turned. Weeks later, I stood behind a podium in New York City. Spotlights warmed my shoulders, and an audience of mentors, young founders, and curious faces stared back. I wasn't nervous. In a world that often confuses noise with worth, I began, real wealth isn't loud. It's quiet. It's consistent. And most of all, it's kind. I paused. Wealth is power, I said, steady and clear, but dignity is purpose. Let's build both. As I walked out of that house, carrying nothing but a sigh of relief, I realized, sometimes you don't need to reclaim your place in your family. You just need to stop letting them define your worth. There are bridges that don't need to be burned, just stopped being built. In life, not everyone chooses to love the right way, but we can always choose to preserve our own dignity and kindness. If this story makes you pause for a moment, please share your thoughts, because sometimes a sincere story is the most healing thing we can give to each other.